Okay, prepare for the interview. Research the company. That's the first question usually. Tell me what you know about Walmart. Tell me what you know about Tyson. Hiring manager is going to ask you, oh yeah, I know you're big. Go to their company website. Look at their core values. Look at anything extra, any kind of philanthropy they're doing. You can mention that throughout the interview or pop it in. It shows that you've done that little extra effort. You'd be surprised when people don't look at it. Oh yeah, I know you're big. I know you kill chicken. I know you are retail. They'll say that. Well, yeah, great. What else do you know? So anything that shows that you've taken the extra step to research it. The culture, too. Ask before you go in for an interview. What's the dress attire? Do I need to wear a suit? Do I not? There's nothing wrong with asking the HR person, how do I need to prepare? I always say I'd rather be overdressed for an interview than under. If you don't know, wear a suit. I wore a suit one time at work, and it was for my interview. I haven't put one on again. That's fine. Everybody looked at me. I didn't know why, and then I realized the company culture was a little bit more relaxed. Prepare, rehearse, the STAR, situation, task, action, and result. Hiring managers and companies have moved to behavioral interviewing type questions. It sounds scary. It's not. Instead of, tell me what you did, or where did you work? How long were you there? It's, okay, Amanda, I see you worked at Taco Bell. Give me an example of a time where you had a customer that you were not able to satisfy them. Mm-hmm. And then the next question, well, how did you go about that? What was the conclusion? They're not looking for short answers. Also, we're looking for, are you making it up? A long story is hard to make up. So think about, before you go on an interview, of specific examples of what you did well, what you didn't do well, like failures. Write them down. And then how you were able to overcome them, or what you did next, or did better next time. Those are very good examples, because a lot of times you get people, tell me about a failure. Well, I don't have one. That's not the right answer. You want to say, yeah, actually I did have a failure. I did this, this, and this, but I was able to correct it, or I wasn't, but here's what I did differently next time. So make a list before you go in an interview, have notes of successes and failures, and be able to explain them in detail. Don't bring up if you had a bad relationship with a manager or a colleague during that. Leave that out. Just kind of talk about yourself. You're going to have questions about conflict. Leave their names out. We ask questions that relate to show us your communication, your teamwork, your interpersonal relationships with your supervisor, your peers. So, yes, answer the questions. They might also say, hey, in school, tell us about a project where you had to work on a team. Give us an example of when it didn't go well. They want to know that, but you want to end it with, it wasn't all about this other person who didn't pull. You can say that, yeah, the other person wasn't pulling their weight, and I had to address it. Mm-hmm. But don't say, it was because of this other person we didn't get it done. That's not owning it. Mm-hmm. So look at it that way. Think about these things before you go in, because you're nervous. You're just going to blur it out, and then you're going to go, oh, I shouldn't have said that. So there are ways to make it sound, here was the problem, here's how we fixed it, or we didn't. We were not able. Unfortunately, her and I were not able to work through it, or him and I, well, how did it work out? Well, I looked for another opportunity and found something. Be honest, but be ready to speak about them.
The other thing, too, that I do all the time in interviews, and I know a lot of interviewers do it, they'll say, okay, so what are your strengths? What are you going to bring that's sort of uniquely you to this team? And people say, oh, I'm a great leader, I've got tremendous drive for results, well, then I write those things down and say, okay, give me an example of how how you use your great leadership skills. You just told me you were a leader. Give me an example of how you were able to be a leader on a project to achieve a great result. And it is amazing to me how many people will go, like, I hadn't thought of that. So again, think about, okay, so what are my strengths? And then think of a good story, a good example of how that, I'm a creative teacher. Okay, give me an example of a really creative lesson plan that you came up with, and how your students reacted to that. Hey, I came up with a really cool way to do multiplication tables involving a game, and the second graders loved that. And that's the kind of thing. And the same thing on weaknesses, because we all have these. I sometimes struggle with attention to detail. Okay, well, give me an example of where that was a problem for you, and what you do to compensate for that. Because the answer is, can't be, well, I just let things fall through the cracks and hope someone else on the team picks it up. You know what? I make sure that when I'm putting together a work team on a project, I make sure that I get somebody on that team who's really good at attention to detail. Or I've gotten much better at keeping lists of all the details that have to be, so that I don't forget stuff. You know, that's the kind of thing. So know that you're going to ask some general questions, but then know that any general answer that you give is going to get a follow-up question about something specific, an example of something specific that illustrates that general expression that you made about your skills and abilities.
In behavioral interview, I'd say the biggest complaint I hear is, I don't think I did well. Well, why? They asked me the same question 5 different ways. Be prepared for that. That's what we've moved to, behavioral interviewing. We want to see not necessarily how you act in that situation, but how are you going to act when we hire you in. So they might ask you 5 different times, 5 different ways, the same question about a conflict. Don't get paranoid and think, oh no, they think I'm not telling the truth, or they're not wanting to hire me. They're going to ask that. And you can also get on the internet. The great thing about the internet, you can put examples of behavioral interview questions. Even in teaching, they're going to ask that. They'll pull it up on the internet, and you can have some. Look at those before you interview. Write down some examples, not in detail, but conflict with Sue. Just so something that'll trigger you in the interview. When you get nervous, you can look down and go, okay, yeah, I remember that